This is a big deal, and it's going to make a significant difference for us. We're all in the same battle, and the battle is stopping the spread of the virus.
It's a logistics operation that is quite extraordinary in its magnitude in terms of the number of flights that have to come into the United States, the partnerships that have been formed, not just with nonprofits, but organizations like the Asia Society that have been helpful.
This is a time of great challenge for the human family. And as president of the Policy Institute of the Asia Society, one of our core responsibilities is to remind people that our response to this crisis must continue to be driven by the principles of human solidarity.
We're hoping this program will facilitate a very important discussion between the medical and public health experts between China and the United States.
How the difference in the global roles of Europe, US, and China since the last financial crisis are going to influence the geopolitical challenges.
Hello, on behalf of Asia Society Southern California, thank you for joining our virtual program, Standing Against Racism in the Time of COVID. My name is Eileen Kwan, and I'm delighted to serve as your MC because today's topic really hits home for me. As the Director of Marketing for Martin Luther King Jr. Community Hospital, a high-quality hospital serving one of the most medically underserved areas in the nation, I am personally witnessing the impact of COVID and what it has done in our community. And as an Asian American, I feel there hasn't been a more pressing and pivotal moment for hidden heroes to shine. My father and my brother are both examples of physicians on the front lines, alongside countless healthcare workers of Asian descent. Yet, their stories are often buried under headlines of the, quote, Chinese virus and trade wars. And my voice is just one of many. COVID-19 has no respect for borders, which brings us all here today. We are truly in this together. Today's program will cover the scapegoating of minorities nationally to the impact on Asian Americans in creative industries globally. Joining us are award-winning journalists, authors and entertainers, prominent political and social activists, and a MacArthur Foundation Genius Award winner. I've been told that as of this moment, we have more than 971 attendees tuning in right now internationally, with speakers participating from the West Coast, East Coast, and Asia, which fits Asia Society's mission nicely, bringing people together to build cross-cultural understanding. And here to share more about this mission, joining us live from New York, is Global Asia Society President and CEO. Please welcome Josette Sheeran.
Thank you, Eileen, and welcome to everyone gathered from all over the world to be part of this special focused topic tonight at Asia Society on racism in the time of COVID. In my humanitarian career, I've helped fight the battle against different epidemics from Ebola in Africa to cholera in Haiti. And I am inspired in this battle, as I've been in past ones, by the heroes among us, by the unforgettable neighbors and friends and health workers and others who have emerged to help protect us and win this battle. But I've also been appalled as we've heard stories of our neighbors, of individuals, of shopkeepers and others being attacked for simply one reason, because they have Asian heritage. As if people want to blame them for the virus itself and for these individuals who have contributed so much to our cities and our communities and our neighborhoods and our life and our economy and entertainment. This is shocking and as painful as any experience of racism and discrimination for any other group throughout history. We have such an amazing group today of people who will talk about that, who will talk about the particular suffering that people of color have witnessed in other battles. But tonight we're here to say, to draw a line in the sand and say, no, there are many terrible things about this virus, but we have to stand together. And to win it, we have to stand together. And we don't want to see individuals suffer simply because of their nationality or heritage or where their parents were born or where they come from. And so it is very important that we become aware of what's happening because it's very painful. I've heard the stories personally. And so tonight we really want to raise awareness. We really want to pull everyone together to stand against hatred, to stand against division, and to say we're in this together. Throughout our history at Asia Society for over 64 years, we were born in the ashes of World War II. And we have really stood against that type of ignorance, that type of attack, to really say we have to build bridges of understanding. We have to really reach across all these barriers to win the battle for a more peaceful and safe world. And so tonight, we're very proud to gather together with all of you. And we're very proud to gather with Asia Society Los Angeles, who has put this together. And tonight, I'm going to make my contribution to their work. And I urge you all also, you'll get an opportunity to do that because they're really leading us, particularly in bringing the heroes of the entertainment world who are here to stand with us tonight. As Shaq tweeted, racism of any kind is terrible. And as he urged everyone to join in this event, we're so glad you're here with us. Thank you very much. And back to you, Eileen.
Thank you so much, Josette. Thank you for reminding us that what ties us globally truly activates us locally. You heard her. If you'd like to make a donation, please do so at asiasociety.org/donate-LA. We're very grateful for the response to Josette's message to support ASSC, and we see that many others are following in her footsteps and in her lead to donate. One activation that I'm personally grateful for is Asia Society and BYD's partnership to support the donation of 100,000 total masks to LA hospitals such as Martin Luther King Jr. Community Hospital. That donation is ensuring that our healthcare professionals are ready to respond to our patients' needs as they evolve. And as we respond to today's pandemic, we face many unknowns together. For more than 30 years, Asia Society Southern California has invested in young leaders to promote effective collaboration across the Asia Pacific. One of those leaders is none other than our own LA Mayor, Eric Garcetti. We are so proud to share that Mayor Garcetti was an Asia 21 Young Leader in the inaugural class of 2006. And here now to offer a message for today's event is Mayor Eric Garcetti.
Hi, everybody. I'm Mayor Eric Garcetti. Los Angeles is a global crossroads, a place where cultures and commerce intersect every single day, a place where we seek to connect and to collaborate with others, not just here in our own backyard, but across the globe. LA is also a city of belonging, a great Pacific city, and even as we maintain our physical distance now, to stop the spread of COVID-19, the people of the city are holding fast to values that define us and that bind us together. We know our diversity is our strength, and we will not tolerate racism or discrimination anywhere, not on our college campuses, not in our immigrant neighborhoods or our Asian American owned businesses. This is such a difficult moment, And I want to send a message loud and clear to our city's Asian, American, and Pacific Islander communities. Thank you for serving on the front lines of our hospitals every day, in our grocery stores and other essential workplaces. Thank you for stepping up to make sure our first responders have the personal protective equipment they need, and for donating to the Angelino campaign, which supports our most vulnerable neighbors. And thank you all for everything you do to contribute to our City of Angels every single day. Stay safe and stay healthy and stay home. And know that we are all here for you and that we are all in this together.
As Mayor Garcetti noted, we are truly a city of belonging and of inclusion, which couldn't be a better transition to our first panel discussion, confronting COVID. Can we move past scapegoating to heal society? And to lead us in our first panel discussion, it is my honor and privilege to introduce our moderator, Lisa Ling, an award-winning reporter and the host and executive producer of CNN's This Is Live with Lisa Ling.
Thank you so much, Eileen, and thank you all so much for joining. I'll be frank, I wish we didn't have to do this and that this could be a much more celebratory occasion, but we all know why we're here, to discuss racism and xenophobia in the wake of COVID-19. This is an unprecedented moment in history, and people are scared. Many are hurt, angry, and looking for a scapegoat. And for many the world over, for the reasons we've all heard, the scapegoats have become Asian people. When I go out with my kids, I find myself speaking English so much more loudly and clearly behind my mask. I've even received a number of ugly and hateful messages on my social media, even wishing harm on my own children. But there have been countless people who have been physically attacked and harmed, including young children, many women, and elderly people. Even Asian healthcare workers treating COVID have reported instances of harassment. But perhaps the most tragic story in all of this is how the virus has exposed devastating mortality rates and unequal treatment along ethnic lines. To talk more about what we can do about it, we've assembled a very passionate panel of guests who have spent their lives and careers advocating for people. We have Congressman Ted Lieu of the 33rd Congressional District in California. He's my congressman, who's been vocal in speaking out against the rise of anti-Asian xenophobia, including his own personal experiences. Stewart Kwoh, founding president and executive director of Asian Americans Advancing Justice in Los Angeles, the nation's largest Asian American legal and civil rights organization. Max Sevillia, Vice President, Government Relations, Advocacy, and Community Engagement for the Anti-Defamation League. And we have Van Jones, one of the most important voices in America today. He's the CEO of Reform Alliance and a CNN host and commentator and social justice warrior who's been speaking out on how COVID has wreaked devastation on communities of color in particular. Welcome, everyone. Stewart, I want to start with you. On the Asian Americans Advancing Justice homepage, you ask for stories of hatred in an effort to track hate. What kind of response have you been receiving?
Thank you, Lisa, and thank you, Asia Society, for hosting this very important event. We have received overwhelming support. In just a little over a month, we've had 140 reports of violence and incidents of hate around the United States. We've also, we have a website called Stand Against Hatred. We've joined with about 5 other groups, for example, Stop API Hate, which has collected many thousands of reports around the United States. So altogether, we have collected over 1,600 incidents of hate just in about 2.5 months. And these are maybe 2/3 verbal attacks, but over 10% are physical attacks, and they're happening all around the United States. So this is reminiscent of the Chinese Exclusion Act period, of the incarceration of Japanese Americans. This is very serious.
And Congressman Lieu, you also have been the target of online racist taunts. How have you handled it? And can you tell us about any legislative efforts that have been introduced to combat this xenophobia?
Thank you, Lisa, for your question and for moderating this panel. It's an honor for me to be here with the Asian Society and all the amazing panelists. And regarding your question, ever since as a kid till now, I routinely will get comments every now and then from people telling me to go back to China or to Japan or to Korea. And if you look at my social media feed, I get quite a few people responding that make racist comments. I think it's important for all of us to speak up and really have people across America understand this issue. This pandemic has affected all Americans, but many don't walk around thinking about hate crimes or thinking about discrimination. But once you explain it to them, then a light bulb goes off in their heads and they understand the issue that Asian Americans are facing. It's one reason I wrote an op-ed in the Washington Post last month criticizing the president for using the term Chinese virus. And because there was a lot of pushback from organizations and groups and individuals, the president has been using that term less. So we do see an effect of public sentiment and pushing back against things that the president says that should not be said.
Yes, he says we need to protect our Asian Americans, but we all know that so much damage has already been done. Max, the ADL has been fighting anti-Semitism and other forms of discrimination for over 100 years. So given this history of fighting against discrimination, what are some of the best practices you can share about confronting the current situation of hate mongering?
Thanks, Lisa, for your question. I want to thank also the Asian Society of Southern California for the opportunity to participate in this panel. So indeed, ADL is 107 years old. It's actually founded in 1913 to fight anti-Semitism, but also all kinds of hate. And we are certainly seeing the same sort of xenophobia, racism, anti-Semitism, discrimination that others have spoken about so far. We are equally seeing a surge of incidents of bias and harassment against not just the Asian American community, but also immigrants and Latinos and the Orthodox Jewish community. ADL has 25 offices around the country. And so one thing that we've done is we prioritize partnerships with these and other communities. And so we are very much working not just in the nation's capital, where I lead the government affairs team, but also in each one of these 25 offices in partnership with other organizations locally to confront what we're seeing. And let me talk about two initiatives specifically where I think that there's lots of opportunity for cooperation. One is that for many decades, ADL has been gathering data about anti-Semitism incidents. We have been tracking trends, offering recommendations to the public, and engaging with law enforcement. Very early on, I did a press conference with Congresswoman Chu and other members of Congress on the issue of the responsible language that elected officials were using and how that language was leading to discriminatory incidents. But the information, the best practices that ADL has gathered, we have made it available to our partner organizations. This is something that we need to fight together. And so the best practices, the opportunities for partnership, for allyship, really, really important. The other initiative that I wanted to touch on is ADL. About 5 years ago, we put a lot of resources into creating the Center for Technology and Society out of Silicon Valley. And we are very much focused on hate speech online. And that's something that as we speak about incidents of discrimination, of actual physical violence, we are seeing multiples of tens in terms of what's happening online. And particularly as people are sheltering at home, they are espousing their hate mongering online with reach that really has no bounds, that expands to the entire world. So the projects, initiatives that ADL is leading in terms of confronting hate speech, that's another opportunity for partnership and to work in allyship with other communities, certainly with the Asian American community.
You're so right, Max. It's been reported by multiple sources that bullying of Asians online has increased like 900%. So appreciate your expertise on this. Van, you have so much on your plate right now. You have been relentlessly advocating for those in communities of color who've suffered the most from COVID, particularly inside the US prison system. Why is this issue of racism against Asians so important to you?
Well, first of all, the virus itself is trying to teach us something about wellness and about oneness. We've not taken wellness seriously enough. And so we have communities where people were already sick, a pandemic jumping on top of an epidemic. So in poor communities, Black communities, brown communities, Native American communities, you already had people who were sick. We hadn't taken wellness seriously enough there because our systems have been sick. And so we're called now to heal people and to heal systems. The other thing is this idea of oneness. We had begun to convince ourselves, some of us, that other human beings were just apps with feet under them. We could just poke these devices and suddenly a product shows up or a service shows up, and we didn't have to worry, well, did the human being who came to my door, were they paid well? Could they see a doctor if they got sick? These weren't, we just all apps. Well, it turns out that we do have to, the virus has a different view. The virus jumps from body to body to body to body, doesn't care your income, doesn't care your race, doesn't care who you voted for. And if that person coming to my door, if they aren't well, I'm not gonna be well. And so suddenly the virus is telling us wellness matters, oneness matters, healing matters. Well, if we don't learn that lesson and all come together and try to help each other and heal each other and recognize each other's pain and each other's promise is all interrelated, we're likely not to learn the lessons of this virus, number one. So just universally. But number two, breakdowns can become breakthroughs if we use them right. The Asian community has been an extraordinary gift to this country. Each individual person, if you think about the Asian people in your life, they're often the best people in your life. The people who have done extraordinarily well at the job, done well on the campus, you rely on. The Asian people in your life are some of the best people in your life who have been there for you. And so when you have a community of people who are literally just innocent victims of nonsense, who have contributed so much and so selflessly and so excellently, it's a double violation not to stand up, because this is about oneness. This is about all of us are in this together. This is about we all need each other. That's what it's about. And then for one group to be singled out and picked on and mistreated, it's just not acceptable. And so, I think it is actually not well known that this is happening. I think if you are Asian, you are very aware of it. I think if you're not, it comes as a shock, because unless you're an idiot, the idea that you're going to pick on any individual group for a global pandemic makes no sense. And so you suddenly realize, oh my God, this is going on. So I think it's important for people who are not Asian to say, I'm not going to live in a country where the fight to stop a virus, which requires absolute unity, is being turned into a fight against individual people, which is about absolute division. That's actually the path for the virus to win. And as the same way the virus is going from body to body to body with no respect to race, our movement has to go from heart to heart to heart to heart with no respect to any of these other divisions either. We got to be at least as smart as this virus. And that's why I'm here.
Thank you so much for that beautiful statement, Van. I mean, you know as well as I know that idiocy can be very loud. There are a lot of them out there, and they have a bully pulpit. So Stewart, tell me about the strategies that your organization, Asian Americans Advancing Justice, are focused on right now.
Thank you, Lisa. I think that we really need a broad strategy, because the stabbings, the spitting, the name calling are so broad and so across the board in the United States. We have to have a broad strategy. So I'll just briefly mention the 3 prongs to the strategy that we think is very important. Number 1, we have to resist the attacks. We have to track them. We have to help the victims. We have to, as Van was saying, we have to build coalitions. I reached out to SEIU, the largest union in the United States, 2 million members. They said they would join us to stop the hate. We have to reach out to African Americans, Pacific Islanders, Latinos, American Indians who are disproportionately impacted by the virus, and we have to support each other. It's not good enough just to say, support us because Asians are being attacked. We also have to lend concrete support to those who are being literally killed by the virus. The second prong of our strategy is we have to fight the common enemy and uplift what Asian Americans are doing, not as exceptions, but we join all Americans. We are in the front lines as grocery store workers, as nurses, as doctors, as researchers. Asia Society, the Committee of 100 are donating many PPEs to hospitals around the country. We need to uplift that so people know what role we're playing in 2020. The third is I think Asia Society and others can spread the best practices from the Asian countries, which went through this first, and spread that message throughout the United States. One example, in late March, we were told everybody should wear a face mask. In Asia, they wore face masks in January, and they told the United States, you all should wear face masks, not just people who are sick. The last thing I'll say is we're trying to bring this all together. And in May 11th and 12th, we're having a 5-hour documentary on Asian Americans on PBS. We're in charge of the curriculum, but we think that's a wonderful way of educating our young people and older people about the challenges and contributions that Asian Americans are making to the United States.
And Max, how has the ADL been responding to the rise of racism directed toward Asians? How specifically?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So very similar to what Stewart just mentioned, we believe wholeheartedly that we need to pull together now more than ever to stand up against anti-Semitism and all forms of extremism and discrimination. ADL, for example, we recently led a statement by over 200 Jewish communal organizations urging political leaders and all Americans to treat COVID-19, the pandemic, and we said as a moment of kindness and solidarity, and to make extra efforts to reach towards one another in support, not look to blame or scapegoat. And this was an important statement because it came from a really broad spectrum of Jewish organizations, but more importantly, because we use that as a tool to confront national lawmakers and decision makers with the sort of engagement and language that they were using. And it was successful in pushing back. We have also engaged our supporters about the discrimination related to Asian Americans with regards to COVID-19. And for example, we've been hosting similar webinars to the one we're doing today. Today we're calling it Fighting Hate from Home. And we had the chairwoman of the Congressional Asia Pacific American Caucus about a month ago talk about the sort of incidents of discrimination that were occurring in her district and around the country. And actually this week on Thursday, we are hosting leaders of the African American community in order to make the point and inform our supporters with regards to the disproportionate impact that the pandemic is having on the African American community. And we are doing the same with regards to Latinos and immigrants. And we are thinking forward of other groups that we need to show up for, show solidarity, and really be proactive in our efforts to look for partnerships. And I'll be remiss if I don't mention one thing that we're tracking. So we at ADL are very concerned that as the crisis continues, and should the economic effects of this crisis actually worsen, we believe are thinking that there will likely be an uptick of racism and scapegoating, particularly as we inch closer to the presidential election. So the work that we're doing today is critical, but it's also essential to building the muscle in order to confront the future racism and scapegoating that is likely to come and potentially even be worse than what we're seeing today, which is already incredibly worrisome.
Max, that brings me to my next question to Congressman Lieu. This is an election year, as Max just said, and it's inevitable that China is likely to become a chief foe for both parties. How will that affect Asian Americans?
That's a great question. So what China did at the very beginning is not defensible. They suppressed information about the virus. They did not disclose what was happening. So we can't defend that. Now, at the same time, when the president uses terms like Chinese virus, that then can have an effect on Americans who happen to be of Asian descent. And we know that the Asian Pacific Policy and Planning Council, who has been tracking hate crimes, they said that after the president used that term, there's a surge of 650 hate crimes that week. So we need to separate the difference between the Chinese government and also what could happen to Asian Americans in the United States when some of this rhetoric gets out of hand. And it is a nuance, but it's a very important nuance. I am an American Congress member. I do not represent China or Chinese foreign nationals. I represent Americans of all races, including Chinese Americans and Asian Americans. And so we do have to draw that fairly bright line. But we do know that when this rhetoric gets out of hand and there's intense xenophobia, then there is a blowback on Asian Americans. And we've seen this happen repeatedly throughout our history, from the Yellow Peril hysteria to Chinese Exclusion Act to internment of Japanese Americans to the murder of Vincent Chen. So this is simply part of our history. We have to be able to fight back against it. And this pandemic, I think Van stated it very well, we have to fight it with unity and with oneness, not through division.
Well, Congressman Lieu, you talk about how indefensible it was for China not to have been transparent about the disease. So as Asian Americans, particularly as Chinese Americans, what should the responsibility be to call out things like that, to call out injustices, human rights abuses, even racism in China?
I think the United States has an obligation to call out when countries do wrong, regardless of what that country is, whether it's China or Russia or another country. At the same time, we have to make sure the language doesn't bleed over and affect Asian Americans. So there's a difference between saying a virus came from China versus calling it the Chinese virus. You're attaching an adjective to a virus that already has an official name as well as an unofficial name. It's COVID-19 or coronavirus. And for some of those folks in America to use language that is ethnic or injects ethnicity into this pandemic, that is something that could affect Asian Americans. But we do have to also hold countries accountable if they do wrong. And so in Congress, I'm sure there will be commissions and committees will be looking into what happened. But right now, the most important thing is trying to deal with the emergency of a global pandemic, including this pandemic in the United States. And the best way to do that is through unity. It's also basic things like getting PPE and testing ramped up into scale. And we have to rely on other countries for help. So right now, China is a supplier of PPE. It doesn't make a lot of sense to antagonize a supplier of PPE when our frontline responders need it. So I think for the moment, we just have to make sure we all work together, overcome this crisis. There's going to be more than enough time to look back at what happened and how we can prevent it from happening again in the future.
Van, this crisis has put a major spotlight on the grave social inequities that exist in this country, particularly in Black and Brown communities. What needs to be done to address these issues, and how can the Asian community help?
Well, again, we're facing a pandemic jumping on top of multiple epidemics. And from a health point of view, I have hypertension and high blood pressure myself. It is epidemic in the Black community because of a lot of historical reasons and just the stress of being Black, frankly, but also some cultural and dietary reasons and lack of ability to get good health care in the community. So we have an epidemic of obesity, of hypertension, asthma, and other issues. So people should be aware that for us, this is not an issue affecting mainly old people. In the Black community, you have people dying in our 50s, 40s, 30s, and even 20s because of the underlying health issues. And so it's a very different situation to be Black. Being on Facebook is like watching a drive-by shooting every few hours because so many African Americans are dying. So it's every few hours someone's posting about someone who they knew who they've lost. It's a huge blow to our community. Also, in the Native American community, the Navajo right now are being just ravaged. Kind of like reminiscence of smallpox for them. They have their own historical trauma with regard to viruses. And New York, New Jersey, and Navajo territory are being hit first and worst, but still no real response to what's going on in tribal land. So there's a lot there. I also have to speak a word about what's happening in our prisons. There's a tendency to say, oh my God, the prisoners, who cares? They committed crimes. I can't figure out how to get toilet paper, I don't know how to educate my kids. So I'm talking about criminals. This is the attitude that's going to make it very difficult to defeat this virus. What we have to remember is, for 3 reasons, we all have to care about this. Number one, the US has the biggest prison population in the history of the world, 2.4 million people. 25% of all prisoners on Earth are US prisoners. So we have a massive prison population. The virus moves through a prison population at 5 to 15 times the rate of a normal population, which means that 2.4 million people are getting sick faster than everybody else. Why do we care? Number one, you could have, the 7,000 jails and prisons becoming morgues from coast to coast, a humanitarian catastrophe. Nobody in the US was sentenced to die from a virus. And let's not forget, a lot of people are in jail because they just can't afford bail. They have minor charges, probation violations, and yet they're sitting there in harm's way. But number two, the guards have to come in and out. Food services has to go in and out. Other staff in and out, which means the virus goes in and out. You cannot defeat the plague on the outside of a prison unless you defeat it on the inside. And you can now do a heat map of Ohio for the virus and determine where the jails and prisons are, because that's where the hot spots are now. And so the virus is now, the prisons and jails are now super accelerating the virus. Number three, you got human beings dying, that's bad enough. Number two, communities, are also going to be affected. But number three, math matters. If 2.4 million people get sick 10 times faster than everybody else, they're going to overflow the hospitals. You only got 30,000 hospital beds. You'll knock out the hospitals, and then you can't go to the hospital. So oneness. This virus is telling us that there's no away. There's no those people over there and us over here. There's nobody to point the finger at. There's nobody to scapegoat. There's nobody to abandon. We're all in this together. And so whether you're talking about people in housing projects, homeless shelters, jails, prisons, detention centers, women's shelters, reservations, those people we haven't thought about very much will be the very places that this virus stages comeback after comeback until we pull everybody in and figure out compassionate release and figure out ways to help and support. So that's why, for me, it's so important. And that spirit of oneness is the best antidote against the spirit of hatred. We've got to really understand that we're all in this together. That will protect the Asian community and so many other communities. And that's why I'm proud to be a part of this effort.
Congressman Lieu, I wanted to ask you about that. Right now, many states are starting to relax stay-at-home orders, and it's possible we may see another wave of deaths imminently. So what is being done to try and safeguard communities of color from being further targeted by the disease?
That's a great question. So this pandemic has affected all Americans, but certain groups have been affected disproportionately. So we know that Blacks, Latinos, Pacific Islanders, and Native Americans have much higher death rates. We know those who live in poverty have much higher death rates. The LA Times recently reported that for people who are in poverty in Los Angeles County, they had a 3 times higher chance of dying from COVID-19. So we have to make sure that we deliver healthcare for everyone. We've been pushing the Trump administration to open enrollment again for the Affordable Care Act. So far, they've refused. But I do believe Abraham Lincoln had it right when he said public sentiment is everything. With it, nothing can fail. Without it, nothing can succeed. So if we get more of the public to push the administration to do more on healthcare, we might see a reopening of enrollment. We also have to make sure that we get the PPE and testing to all communities. And to really get out of this crisis, to reopen safely, we need to do 3 things. We need to ramp up testing, we need to do tracing, and then we need to isolate. So testing, tracing, and isolation, none of that is at scale right now. And so when you see states reopening, what's going to end up happening is you're just going to get more COVID-19 cases. It's going to result in more illnesses and more death. So hopefully we can ramp up testing, tracing, isolation before most of the states start reopening.
I have a question from someone who's watching. What, if anything, have we learned from heinous incidents such as Charlottesville and hate crimes that transpired at the Pittsburgh synagogue and at the El Paso shopping mall with respect to the right-wing white supremacist movement in order to push back on attacks against the Asian American community before things terribly escalate? Max, do you want to?
Yeah, I'm happy to take that question. So with Charlottesville and El Paso, what we saw is, again, the need for all of us to come together, and the need to be conscious and fearful of extremist elements within society, not to ignore them because they're loud but a small minority, but rather to confront them. ADL has made a priority confronting extremism. And one of the priorities that we've had for both Congress and the administration is to take serious the threat of domestic extremism. We are beginning to see some worrisome signs related to COVID-19 and extremism. So for example, when there have been rallies in front of state capitals or city halls pushing or calling for the reopening of the economy, there have been racist, anti-Semitic, neo-Nazi sentiments echoed within these groups. Extremists have not led, or what ADL has seen is that extremists have not led these rallies, but almost in every occasion they have participated. We also understand that there is a greater threat of terrorism in the United States because of the opportunity. Related to COVID-19 and the distractions and the very many crises that we as individuals and our leaders are confronting. So critical at this point is not to lose sight of these extremist elements and to continue to call on the administration and Congress to remain vigilant and to prioritize the threat that comes from these extremist groups, because what we saw in Charlottesville, what we saw in El Paso and elsewhere around the country is truly worrisome, and we don't wish it on any community, certainly not on the Asian American community, that right now there's such an elevated sentiment of discrimination against.
I wanted to add that I do think the law enforcement has to help the Asian American community track the hate crimes and the hate incidents, because as you said, Lisa, there's been a lot of hate online, and so we can track what is happening. The second thing I would just say is we have to hold our national American leadership accountable for using the terms Chinese virus, and we should hold them accountable. We're talking about China, but we have to hold American leadership responsible and accountable for letting this virus get out of hand and for letting racism get out of hand. They need to say much more than what they're saying against racism. Otherwise, we're all just individuals out there or organizations out there, but we need stronger national leadership. And I believe that should be the deciding point for now and in the election.
We don't have a lot of time left. I want to ask one last question of Van. He and I have been texting and talking about China's role in the upcoming election. And Van, I hope you don't mind, but I'm going to read something that you texted me last week. As China rises, we are going to have to work very hard to fight anti-Asian bigotry. We need a new vision of America that lets us celebrate having the genius of all humanity in one country. That's how we can still play our special role, even if we're no longer the richest nation or even the sole military superpower. First of all, thank you for that collective we. And can you expound a little bit on this?
Look, I think that we're asking for mainstream America to do something very difficult. Change is hard. As I always say, I've been trying to lose the same 5 pounds for 5 years. It's just hard to change, even when you want to. When you say to mainstream America, okay, you're going to have a different demographic mix of America as we move toward the middle of the new century. Your grandchildren may not look like your grandparents. That's change. When we say that not only going to have differences internally with regard to the demographics, robots might have more jobs than people soon. That's change. And we say not only in the economy, but geopolitically, the United States may no longer be the sole power. That China is going to rise, and they may refer to this as China's century by the end of it. Well, you're asking for people to accept an awful lot of change in a short period of time, and change is hard. And that says nothing about the changing gender roles and sexuality. There's a lot of change that we're asking for people. And for those of us who feel comfortable with the changes and who feel comfortable with change, just personality type, feel comfortable with change, it doesn't seem so bad. But if you are somebody who change isn't easy, people need help. People need encouragement. And part of what we've got to learn how to do is to call people up as much as we call them out. We're very good at calling people out. You're a bigot, you're a racist, you're a sexist, you're a this, you're a that. We're not as good at calling them up and saying to people in this country, we need you. We need you. We love you. We respect you. You've raised good families. You've worked a trade. You've done great things in your neighborhood. But you got Americans who are scared to open the door, not because of the virus, but because of somebody might hurt them. Little children are scared in your country, and we need you. We need your help. We got kids in this country going to bed hungry, or living in neighborhoods where they go to funerals every other weekend for their peers. Some of them never met their fathers. We can't have the country we want without you. We bring great gifts, but we also need your gifts. And we can create a country together that the world will marvel at because of the genius of all people being all here together. But we can't get there without your help and without your part being elevated. We don't want white folks to fall down. Hell, we're all Americans. We want you to be greater. We can imagine an America where the white folks and the black folks and the brown folks and the Asians and we're all better. We're all stronger. And frankly, we get to cheat in America. We get to steal all the best people from around the world and put them on our team. So that means we can compete with China and anybody else. If we keep cheating and stealing all the talented people, we got a shot. So a big part of America rising is us stealing all the good people from everybody else's team and being able to win. So when you see all these geniuses coming from Latin America and Asia and everybody joining our team to help us deal with China and anybody else, you should clap for them. They should clap for you. We're gonna win. We've got to be able to tell a different story about what it means to see all these different people here joining America's team to keep us strong and amazing. And I think if we talk about it in those terms, it gives people a permission structure to celebrate and to feel like this is not to their detriment. It's for their benefit and for their good. And then they also then want to be good. This is the great challenge I think we have, but I think we're up to it. I mean, we're right. America's great because of all these folks. And I'm just proud to be a part of the effort. And we will go through some tough times. There's going to be some tears. There's going to be some bad things that happen. There's going to be some funerals maybe. But breakdowns can become breakthroughs if we use them right. And you will not fight alone. I tell you that. You will not fight alone. That's one thing we learned in Charlottesville and everything else. We thought it was just Black people were going to be crying when those bigots did that, and it was the whole world crying. We didn't have to fight alone, and you won't fight alone either.
And thank you for that vision for America. That's the America that I want to live in, and you know, hopefully this crisis will truly bring out the best in people, and that we will be encouraged and moved to want to work together. I want to thank our panel for taking the time to be here with us. Thank you for such important information and your expertise. I want to quickly talk to Asian Americans directly who are watching this. You know, what has been happening to Asians here in this country and around the world has been terrifying and devastating. But it's so important that if we want to stand up, if we want people to stand up and fight racism against us, as Stewart said earlier, we need to stand up and condemn racism of all people and be of service to other communities that are in need. And I know so many of you who are watching already do. And to those Chinese Americans in the audience who are watching, so many of us see ourselves as bridges between two countries with rich and complicated histories. But we also need to be as vocal as we are of our own government when China commits human rights abuses or silences dissidents or mistreats foreigners, particularly African nationals during this time of COVID. We cannot be silent on these issues. We need to stand up for our shared humanity. These are times, as we know, of immense uncertainty, but we always have to remember that strong people stand up for themselves. Stronger people stand up for others. Thank you all so much. Eileen, I will turn the program back to you.
Thank you so much again, Lisa, Van, Stewart, Max, and Representative Lieu for this imperative and galvanizing message. As Van said, this is a clear call up, not a call out, to keep that forward momentum going and organize our community and protect our minorities of color. And of course, I want to thank all of you for joining us now, 1,077 registrants who are being a part of this critical dialogue today with us and our panelists. We cannot emphasize enough that we are all in this together. So with that, I have the great pleasure of introducing Dick Drobnick, Chairman of Asia Society Southern California, who is here to share a few words with us now.
Thank you very much, Eileen. This has been a thought-provoking, fascinating, informative session. I'd like to make a brief comment about Van's last statement, his closing statement. I agree with it, but I would use a little bit different terminology. Rather than cheat to steal the talent from around the world, I think we will win by continuing to attract the talent from around the world, because our universities and society are so attractive to bring these people in. Our event today, Standing Against Racism in the Time of COVID-19, is the third in the Asia Society Southern California series on COVID-19. We will be doing a fourth event on the impact of COVID on real estate markets around the Pacific Rim towards the end of this month, and more information will be coming. I'd like to thank a few people, in particular our audience. As Eileen said, over 1,000 people from 20 countries around the world. We're delighted you've tuned in. We hope that you will take some of the messages from our panelists and move these into action. I also want to sincerely thank our financial sponsors who have made today's event possible. There are so far 5 of our board members from Southern California Asia Society and 2 friends of the Asia Society of Southern California. Thank you to Stella Lee, the president of BYD North America, for making BYD a platinum sponsor for this event. And thank you to Bala and Raju Vegesna, who have made their foundation a gold sponsor of this event. Thank you to CC Chan, co-founder of Storyfile, who has made Storyfile a gold sponsor of this event. And thank you to Michael Gisser, Brian Traeger, and Celeste and Tom McLean, who have used personal funds to become silver sponsors for this event. And thank you to Thomas Malayal, who has also used personal funds to be a bronze sponsor of this event. In closing, let me say additional donations are certainly very welcome in order to continue to support Asia Society Southern California's efforts. And if you happen to be inclined to support our efforts in this way, please go to asiasociety.org/donate-LA. Please do that. Thank you very much. In closing the segment, I'm very pleased to say that the National Urban League has been a major partner in this effort. And we have a recording from Marc Morial, the president and CEO of the National Urban League. Thank you, Marc.
I'm Marc Morial, president and CEO of the National Urban League. Like you, I'm now working from home for the 7th straight week and anxious to get back to normal as quickly as we can, but as safely as we must. And today I'm proud to join all of you in an important conversation, especially my colleague and friend, Michael Lawson, president and CEO of the Los Angeles Urban League, and the Honorable Ted Lieu, a congressman from the great state of California, along with every one of you who's part of this important discussion. I just want to make a few points. Number one, we've seen the ugly head of racism rise with respect to this pandemic. Whether it's the disparaging statements made about Asia or about Asian Americans, or if it's the disparities that exist when it comes to the severe impact of COVID-19, or now the wide gaps in terms of the economic situation we face in the country with 26 million people unemployed. This is a moment of truth, a moment of action, a moment when we must not only converse, but we must be determined to rebuild this nation better than it was before. And what that means is that communities of color must not only be at the table, but communities of color must be in the plan. As we pursue equitable responses, we've got to rebuild our public health system in an equitable way. We need an economy in this country where Americans don't have to struggle from check to check. And we certainly need a nation that is intolerant of racial hatred. So congratulations on your discussion. The National Urban League and the Urban League movement, we're all proud to stand with you. Have a great conversation.
Thank you so much, Marc, for speaking on behalf of the country's largest historic civil rights and urban advocacy organization, and for shining a light on the disparity and challenge ahead of us as we rebuild together. And now we are going to hear from leaders of a young organization working with minorities toward a more inclusive society, and that is the East Coast Coalition for Tolerance and Non-Discrimination. Please welcome, from the East Coast, moderator Tom Nagorski, Asia Society's Executive Vice President. Tom?
Thank you, Eileen. Great to be with all of you. Great to hear the discussion you've just had, and greetings from Brooklyn, New York, which is where I join you tonight. We have had, and we will have, after this brief discussion, many very well-known names, well-known people, bold-faced names. We're going to take a moment now to spend a few minutes with people you probably have not heard of. I suspect before their young careers get going, you're going to hear a lot about them and from them. As Eileen said, they run something called the East Coast Coalition for Tolerance and Non-Discrimination. Bincheng Mao is finishing his freshman year at New York University, just a few miles from where I'm sitting tonight at NYU. Charlotte Wu is wrapping up her first year at Wellesley College, a little bit north of here in Massachusetts. Together they created the ECC in the fall, before COVID was with us. It now includes, in very short time frame, 3,000 students from 15 universities up and down the East Coast, and a warm welcome to you both. Many of the panelists who've spoken thus far in this event have talked about the need for impact and the need for actually getting things done. Of course, getting youth involved is no small part of that. So Bincheng Mao, let's start with you. You, as I said, are the founding president of this very young organization. And while you are Chinese American, I think it's interesting that the organization, if I understand it correctly, was created with other groups, not Chinese American in mind. And again, as I said a few weeks before, COVID was even a word in our lexicon. So perhaps we can start just with a simple explanation of how and why it did get started.
Thank you so much, Tom. We started at the ECC in late September 2019, where there was a wave of anti-Semitism and anti-immigrant sentiments in New York City, as well as regions nearby. So, and one of my close friends had his room vandalized because he spoke a foreign language in public. He was speaking Arabic. So after all these incidents, we started to think, like, what are some of the actions we can take to bring our society into a more inclusive future, and letting people know that these actions, these xenophobic, these anti-Semitic actions are harmful not only to minorities, but to all of us of society. So we created the East Coast Coalition. We rallied around students from NYU first, and the other colleges in New York City, Parsons School of Design, Columbia, and later Cornell University in Ithaca, also in New York State. So as we expand this organization, we hope to bring more people to the awareness that these anti-minorities actions have to be stopped.
So as I understand it then, begun as something to fight against anti-Semitism, to fight against violence or racism against Arab Americans, and then COVID comes. And perhaps you shared with me before the event, and maybe you can share with our audience, Bincheng, you experienced a pretty nasty version of this yourself. Why don't you share that with us and explain how that then led for you and your organization to pivot in another direction?
Absolutely. It was in late February 2020, where I was waiting in line for a checkout in a grocery store in New York City. And at that time, I was the only person wearing a face mask in that crowded mall, because we haven't put out, the government hasn't put out a suggestion for face covering yet. And then a middle-aged customer approached me. He pointed his finger at me and yelled, "You virus, get out." And he poured his half-drunk water on my face.
Can you say that again? He said what?
He said, he called me a virus, and then he asked me to get out of the mall. And then the ironic thing out of this painful experience, to be honest, is that as the only person wearing a face mask, I was not only protecting myself, but also the people around me by preventing my respiratory droplets from landing on any others. But then, by his actions, he, as someone who's not wearing a face mask, nor anyone else does, those actions of excluding people who are wearing face masks, or even just look at people who are Asian, that's not a feasible way forward, and that's not even productive to our disease control efforts.
So you then pivoted,
yes,
having started and founded this organization. And how did that change your work and what you were doing?
Yes. So after this personal incident, I also talked to many of my friends who are working with the ECC, who happen to be either Chinese Americans or Asian American. And we figured, what are some of the developments regarding this anti-Asian sentiments that's developing as this pandemic has worsened. So we observed incidents in society, we observed incidents reported by news media, and we found that there has been a global rise of anti-Asian sentiments. Most recently, one of the severe incidents happened in the Netherlands, where a commercial radio station, Radio 10, called Chinese minorities, Asian minorities a virus in one of their songs. And then they called for even a boycott of Chinese food and Chinese culture. So after that incident, members of the ECC, we figured there has to be something done about it. We have to let people raise this awareness on how unfeasible or unthinkable these kind of action can bring under harms on Asian minorities or just all people. So we organized a cooperation, a partnership with local Dutch citizens who are of Chinese or Asian descent, and we drafted a detailed petition for the lower house of the Dutch parliament. And then in 2 weeks, we collected 50,000 signatures and successfully submitted that petition to the Dutch parliament. It's currently under review. But then we believe by doing this, we can let people know that we're voicing our concerns and let people know that we're not just stand there and let these things happen. We can actually do something about it.
It's inspiring. Let's go to Charlotte Wu then. Charlotte, you're, as I said, up at Wellesley College. And you are, if I have it right, the Marketing and Outreach Director if we can go to Charlotte Wu now, for this same organization, the ECC. And I'm just wondering, when you do the outreach, what are you asking of members and what's been the response?
Hi, Tom. Thank you so much for the introduction. It's truly my pleasure to speak here today. So we have now over 3,000 members, but it really took us a long time to gain people's attention and members to our coalition. After the founding of our coalition, we reached out to other nonprofit organizations, advocacy and educational institutions. We started off in New York City and we expanded to other states around the East Coast. We asked them for collaboration on our projects together. And after hearing that they have the same vision and passion on work for social justice, we collaborated with them, and then with the launching of our projects, we attracted many members who are also very interested in what we're doing, and they joined us in helping with the projects. So people are really excited to hear about our organization because they think we're a fresh voice and the young people can actually do something about this crisis, and we can do something, we can speak out. And
I'm curious because, as Bincheng said, this began with Chinese Americans, the two of you, working on behalf of others who were not Chinese American. Are the people you are recruiting on campuses now, do they tend to be Asian Americans, or are they a mix of backgrounds who have come in since the COVID outbreak and since the racism we've seen as a result?
The people actually come from various backgrounds and gender, because I think through the news, we see that the COVID-19 has caused many horrible incidents, hate crimes across the world, and people are really concerned with the situation. And we're getting like a lot of attention from different members, and they're very interested in what we're doing. So our work is not only limited to Asian, but all genders and all racial backgrounds.
And I asked you, I asked Bincheng about a personal experience, and if you don't mind sharing, because so much of what we hear about in the context of this discussion tends to be Westerners by and large, Americans, Westerners who are behaving badly against people of Asian ancestry. You shared an interesting example of some pretty rotten treatment that you got, which I guess I would be described as Chinese against Chinese. Can you explain the story of what you experienced as someone from Shenzhen in southern China?
Oh yes, because I do have many personal experiences facing regional discrimination back when I was in China. So I grew up in Shenzhen, which is a city in China. When I moved to Hong Kong during my middle school years, I experienced regional discrimination just because I came from mainland and do not speak their local language. The shop assistants and restaurant servers would roll their eyes at me, or they ignore me when I speak to them in Mandarin. And that was the incident when I first saw that discrimination is really a thing. And when I moved to US for my college education, I began hearing stories from other students from different backgrounds, and they also face the same issue of discrimination. So that is the time when I realized that discrimination is not a regional but global problem. And it can happen to any race and any gender, so we have to do something collectively to stop it.
Yeah. Well, I admire so much what you both are doing. This is a short segment, but I'm going to ask you both one question, and then we'll go back to some more of those bold-faced names I mentioned. But Charlotte, you first. Is there a call to action or something you'd like to ask of either the well-known people who are in this event tonight, or the 1,000 or so who are joining us, as young, active, inspired college students who are involved in this? What would you ask of them?
Yes, I want to thank all the guests who spoke out today and all the audience that tuned into this forum. The message I want to deliver is that the root cause to this issue, but also the solution, is the people. Since the virus, we see so many tragic incidents happening against Asian minorities and other people all around the world. But viruses don't discriminate people like people do. And this is why this is very important for people like us to speak out and panels like this to tell the people and the world that these actions are not to be tolerated. So I think by speaking out on this forum and by continuing my work in the coalition, I want to encourage everyone in the audience to speak out and fight for social equality, because your voice should be and will be heard.
Well said. Bincheng Mao will give you the last word. Do you have a message for, again, either our guests tonight or those who are watching around the world?
Yeah, thank you so much, Tom. And I also want to thank all of the guests for joining our program today. As our previous speaker has said, strong people speak out for ourselves and stronger people try to speak out for others. I believe people of all ages, young people, middle-aged people, and elderly people have the chance and have the necessity to speak out not only for ourselves, but also for the people around us. That's how we can protect the people in our society, especially now during a time of public health emergencies. As the COVID-19 breakout occurred first in January 2020, the East Coast Coalition and many members who are working with us have donated 50 cartons of medical supplies, PPEs, to frontline medical hospitals in Connecticut and New York State, and later on to the Red Cross Society in Italy to help more people to get through this virus safely. So we hope that more people can join our cause and more people can help join our direction in helping minorities and all marginalized populations during this time of crisis. Thank you so much.
Bincheng Mao, New York University. He's just finishing his freshman year, and Charlotte Wu at Wellesley College also finishing up freshman year, both I assume studying virtually. I'm certain we have not heard the last from either one of them. Thank you both for joining us and for all you do. I'm Tom Nagorski, back now to Eileen Kwan, our MC. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tom, Bincheng, and Charlotte, for coalescing and combating racial discrimination. I am personally moved to hear your testimony and your passions in elevating what is very subtle and very complex discussion. So thank you for bringing that to light. And as a prelude to our final panel, here are a few video messages that Tom had mentioned earlier from very prominent young Asian Americans about tolerance and solidarity during this pandemic.
Hi everyone, it's Maya and Alex. We hope you're doing well, and we're very happy to be joining Asia Society Southern California for this program.
When we were honored last spring, we spoke in our acceptance speech about the importance of the Olympic spirit: unity, understanding, friendship, and mutual respect. Those values are especially important right now.
We are all connected and part of a global family. We must stand together in solidarity. Remember, you are not alone. We will get through this together.
What's up, guys? I'm Jason Chu. I'm happy to join Asia Society of Southern California for this program. As a rapper and a recording artist, I know how important it is for communities of color to understand our history and to speak up. There are over 150 years of Asian American history, from Filipino migrant workers to Chinese indentured servants, Japanese farmers, anti-war activists, and most recently, Sikhs and people in the South Asian community stepping up and feeding frontline workers. Our communities have always been an integral part of American society. We have created culture, built businesses and industry, and served everywhere from media and entertainment to journalism, the sciences, government, and beyond. Let's come together in this time to emphasize and affirm what is already true. Without Asian Americans, there is no America as we see it today. Those who don't know their history are bound to repeat it. But when we know our stories, we can write new chapters. So please, let's come together, let's take care of our most vulnerable. And anytime you see anti-Asian racism or racism of any kind, speak up. Report incidents of hate to the Stop AAPI Hate Reporting Center. Learn how to de-escalate situations. Take care of people who are being harassed. And together, we're going to get through this really difficult time in our history. It's a privilege to be with you all. I hope you're safe. I hope you're well. Let's get through this and keep growing as the Asian American community.
Benjamin Franklin said, if you choose temporary security over essential liberty, you deserve neither. My name is Jasmine Cho, and I am happy to join Asia Society Southern California today for this program to defend our essential freedom that is under attack for many of my fellow Asian Americans, indivisible with liberty and justice for all. For those of you who don't know where this is from, You may recall reciting this every morning in your classrooms at school. People who are xenophobic and racist do not understand the weight and responsibility of these words. This belief is what it means to truly be an American. The irony of COVID-19 is that it does not discriminate against race or nationality. Rather, it seems that COVID-19 can't even tell the difference between race, ethnicity, and nationality. As former Miss Korea and current television host and reporter with VOA News, I have had the opportunity to mentor young Asian Americans all around our country. And right now, I want to tell them and everyone to be strong, speak out, stand up, and stay united. The common enemy in this crisis is the virus, and it requires us to do our part to fight the virus, not each other. So please, let's be kind and respectful of one another, and remember that we must work together. Thank you.
Like the young Asian American activists we just heard from, we stand in solidarity to defend our essential freedoms now more than ever. Asian Americans have gained a more prominent voice in politics as well through Andrew Yang's presidential campaign, and nowhere more than here in California, thanks to the recent success in media and culture. So how will the entertainment industry be affected by the anti-Asian backlash from the COVID pandemic? To answer that question, I am delighted to bring us into our final panel, being a multicultural creator in the time of COVID. By introducing to you now the moderator of our final panel, producer Janet Yang, who is a governor of the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences and chair of Asia Society's U.S. Asia Entertainment Summit. Janet, will you please join us?
Thank you, Eileen. As recently as March 9th of this year, some of us attended one of those most lavish Hollywood premieres of all time at the elegant Chinese theater. There were the typical hordes of paparazzi and screaming fans all trying to catch glimpses of stars on the red carpet. Who were they? Crystal Liu Fei in a gilded gown with a train as long as Princess Diana's at her wedding. Mega action stars Donnie Yen and Jet Li, and our own Tzi Ma. This was, of course, the premiere of Disney's live-action version of Mulan, and it was destined to be that elusive goose that laid the golden egg, a movie that had equal appeal in both China and America, the two largest film markets by far. The movie's release would cap a year and a half of truly game-changing film and television. There was the first blockbuster film with an all-Asian cast, Crazy Rich Asians, a Golden Globe Best Actor Award winner and a host in Sandra Oh, and the indie hit The Farewell. Finally, amazingly, precisely a month earlier, there was the Best Picture win for a Korean language film, Parasite. After decades of fighting for greater representation on screen, it seemed we had finally arrived, or at least the door was more widely swung open. A month later, the images of this star-studded red carpet of Mulan have been replaced with something far different. Videos of Asians being yelled at, sometimes knifed or shot at, and often being told to go back to China. Had we suddenly gone from being invisible to too visible? Are we truly now afraid to go out in public and not just because of the virus? Talk about whiplash. So these recent events have obviously affected all of us, whether or not we are directly affected by in our finances or health or time management. For Asians, particularly those of Chinese descent, there is now a whole new other layer of existence that we must contend with, especially as the US and China have the testiest relationship in many decades. For cultural creators like us who are intrinsically bicultural and have often deliberately chosen to blend elements of East and West in our work, we face yet even more challenges. Where does that leave us? Are we agents of change or the victims of it, or both? To explore these questions, I am so pleased to be able to present to you 4 individuals who are in an ideal position to join in this conversation. As a time-saving measure, I will introduce to you each of them via the questions I am posing. Wang Leehom, or Leehom, you have had a unique and stunning career with such an unusual trajectory. born and raised in Rochester, New York, in an academic family, you have gone on to become arguably China's biggest pop star. You've also worked as an actor with some of the greatest living directors, such as Ang Lee and Michael Mann, and also with stars such as Jackie Chan and Zhang Ziyi and your co-panelist Joan Chen. And not to mention the fact that you've directed your own films. Damn it, Leehom, what haven't you done? All this while straddling two continents, as your music has intentionally blended elements of the East and the West. You are a veritable cultural ambassador, whether you intended to be or not. How are things changing for you now that the two countries you've been bridging have a distinctly antagonistic relationship?
Thank you, Janet, for that gracious introduction. Yeah, this is a very new world that we're living in all of a sudden. And I think coronavirus is creating a new world order, whether we like it or not. Here in Taiwan, we're in about week 16, and we've been successfully, thankfully, been able to flatten the curve and even contain it. Here we have only 94 active cases today. But I think for the entertainment industry, we've been hit very hard, not just in film, but also in music. The live touring is pretty much come to a screeching halt. And I don't know the next time you're going to be able to get 30,000 people in a stadium. Don't know when that's going to be. But as far as films are concerned, I think it's more important than ever for us writers to start, in quarantine, putting together stories that are going to be important. I think we talk a lot about the importance of media and how the stories are, how the coronavirus story is shaped and how important it is to make it a fair story. And I think also equally important, it's in the stories we tell, whether it's through music, through movies, through TV shows. I hope that this crisis is not an opportunity wasted, like Van Jones was saying, to create oneness. And for us creators, that opportunity, we say crisis is a horrible thing to waste. And it's important that it informs our content creation. Because these next couple of years, I think, are going to be the most malleable for creating this new world order and what it's going to look like in the future.
Thank you, Leehom. Yes, I hope so too. Joan Chen Chung, I first met you in Beijing in 1981. At the time, you were known as Little Flower, Xiaohua, and you were China's most beloved darling by far in the movie industry. When you told me you planned to come to the US to pursue acting, I was stunned, frankly, incredulous. And I thought to myself, what a huge mistake she is making, throwing away her goddess status for an extremely uncertain future. I really didn't think your choices were wise. Well, you proved me wrong. You've not only worked with the Uber directors Ang Lee, Bernardo Bertolucci, David Lynch, Oliver Stone, and numerous top Chinese directors. You've directed your own films, both here and in China. You too symbolize the very essence of someone who is inexorably Chinese while still being an international icon. In a recent conversation, you said at this moment in time, you are actually weary from the inevitable political rhetoric that has been swirling around. And you would like to focus instead on, quote, understanding what endures and what's essential in human nature and in the human condition beyond politics. I am really moved by this. I often feel the same way. As I'm scrolling through the news, I think I should be spending more of my precious time reading classic novels or poetry or looking at art, many of the works of which have been created during the most challenging times. So we know that while politics shift and power changes hands, there are always artists who have an undying search for truth and beauty. It is an inexorable part of the artist's journey, never more so during now times of turmoil. What do you find truthful and beautiful these days?
Good question. So I began catching up on old movies and literature, because I did not go to school in the United States, and I think I missed some of the important literature and music. And so in this time, I have been enriching myself. And in the process, I am reminded, like you said, why I came to this country. We pay a very high price to leave our homeland and come to this country. Before I left China, I knew little about America. I was making my last movie in China. It's called Awakening. And the director, Tang Wenji, was the only director back then that had a serial system. And he had records of classical music. And so when I was 19, and I, for the very first time, heard Beethoven, and I heard Dvorak, the New World. And that's the America I wanted to go to. That's the America. And flash forward to now, much has changed, but I still have New World, I still play it. And, you know, I'm reminded that in that piece of music, the composer, when he was interviewed, he, being a Czech, but living in America back then when he composed, he was inspired by what he called Negro spirituals, African American spirituals, and Native American music. And he found that there is similarity amongst these three groups: Native American music, African spirituals, and music from Scotland. And to infuse all of it and create that piece of music. And I was in Xi'an when I first heard it. And that oneness that Van Jones was talking about was happening to me. And so that's the beauty that I have been immersing myself with. What endures? Nature endures. Art endures. Political rhetoric does not endure. And so for us, what can we do? I mean, I heard all the other panelists. I was listening to them and very moved by all the efforts, but I'm not a politician. We're artists. What do? We create art. And this is a time the pause button is pushed, and you can think greater. You can have the solitary moment, peaceful moment, and ask for more. We want to create cinema, not any political messages. You know, we want to, in reading, you know, like, okay, when do I feel represented? I mean, we want to be represented. When do I feel represented? Well, I did feel represented when I was listening to Beethoven. I did feel represented when I was listening to the New World, from a deeper, more profound level where my self-realization takes place. And so I feel that we are one, that I am a life first, on the level of a tree, the same thing. And second, I'm a human. At different times, different stages, we all walked out of Africa. And, you know, Confucius is my ancestor, so is Plato. And it is that I'm just infused with that oneness. And the virus, when this is happening, you know, there's so many at home, you know, the concerts, those lovely times. Yo-Yo March started with the concerts, and there is this great positive thing that we must pursue. That beauty, that art, that will endure. That will endure. So that's how I feel. You know, we want to make movies like Leehom just said. You know, we have an opportunity now. There are so many wonderful human stories coming out of this COVID-19 disaster, and we have a chance to create cinema, and we want more. We don't want Hollywood just to say, okay, diversity, we'll put you in Star Wars, and then you got Jiang Wen, you got Donnie Yen, the biggest movie stars in China, doing what? There is no distinct three-dimensional development of the character. Is that do I feel represented when I was watching them? No, no. We ask for more. We want to create art. We want our inner lives to be explored. And Janet Yang, you've done this with Joyla Club. You know, we have, like you said, this movement, this films that we're doing, and we will continue to do and do better. And I also appreciate very much Van Jones' comment on not calling people out only. We call them up, we inspire them. And what makes us one, we contribute to the humanity. We contribute to humanity, we're part of the humanity. And I think the best representation is contribution. And so that's where my mind is.
That's a very beautiful place for your mind to go and for many of ours to go. I just recently saw something that was a poem that was written as if it were in a children's book, and I'll share it with everybody, but it is, to me, also represents about how we can look back on this time as a moment in time where we can truly heal with 20/20 hindsight. So I'm happy to share that with you later. All right, Ty. Again, I don't see anybody, which was a surprise to me, but I know you're there.
I see you guys, though.
I can see you.
Oh, well, it was supposed to be, and I'm sorry, I can't see.
Use a gallery view, maybe.
Oh, well, I don't see anything. Okay, never mind. Ty, you have been gracing our screen for decades, but I have to say, just in recent years, you've really become front and center on screen, the star and not just the sidekick. So we've seen you recently as the father in The Farewell, where you were really an anchor and provided so much comfort to the family. You were in Mulan, quite a different father. You were fierce and proud. And then recently in Tiger Tail on Netflix, a wonderful movie, you're a father who's very wounded and mysterious. In other words, you can pretty much cover all grounds as a father, representing every type possible. So it's no wonder that you've been dubbed everyone's father. When they say everyone, I like to think that they mean truly everyone and not just an Asian father. It would be nice that, in fact, an Asian father could be that to everyone. What do you see as your role as an actor these days during these tumultuous times? And has anything changed for you recently?
Hi, Janet.
Hi.
Can you hear me?
I
good?
can hear you.
All right. Do a shout out for you because you've been in the front lines for a long time and really speaking up and speaking out for all of us and promoting, you know, what we are doing, you know, in the American and international film industry. So thank you very much for your efforts. I'd like to thank really all the panels that came before us who were so articulate, you know, about, you know, what we're going through today. And in some ways almost feel unworthy of being part of this conversation. And in some ways it's true. You know why? Because these are the people that we should really listen to, you know, because they should be our spokespeople. We have another responsibility. Our responsibility is not to create our own work in the sense that we're speaking, you know, in our stream of consciousness. We speak other people's words. That's what we do, we're actors. So really in essence, I feel that our contributions are a little different. I think, you know, for people who are listening to the panelists before us, that is crucial. Those are the people you want to listen to day in and day out. When you try to listen to us, we are always, you know, presented in a context of the story. So in that sense, you're listening to our characters. And the three characters that you're talking about, you know, it just happen to be fathers. They give us the opportunity to kind of give the world, you know, all these multiple views of who we are. And we are so diverse in so many ways. And I think that's what our job is to continue to give the world all of these, the fact that we are multifaceted, that we bring into the world, you know, all of our angst, our shortcomings, our attributes. I think these are the things that we want to continue to contribute, you know, as an actor. And I think for the longest time, I refused to call myself, you know, and other people say, oh, you're an artist. I like to see myself as a practicing artist, because I think ultimately we continue to grow, we continue to learn, we continue to absorb, and, you know, from all the people around us, you know, our society, what is happening to us. That is our job. I mean, if you look at, you know, how Joan expresses herself, it's with so much, you know, emotion and core connectiveness. That's what we do. We try to present that, you know, we try to give the world, you know, about how we feel as opposed to what you're looking at, you know. And I think by us doing that, hopefully it will strike a chord. Hopefully that, and I think it has, you know, in recent experiences from the films that I've been involved with. And the most rewarding thing is that we not only move people who look like us, we also move people who are unlike us. So I think these are the contributions that we need to do. And I think it's a noble cause. I think if you, the parents out there of Asian American descent, and have kids who have the inkling of wanting to write, wanting to hold, you know, use a camera to shoot something, or to be in front of the camera, or to produce something, hey, you know, why not support it? Give them the opportunity, because it is a very powerful medium which we're in, film and television. We can really change minds and change perceptions millions at a time in a global scale. So I think, you know, for us to be a part of this is very exciting, and you should be very proud of the children that want to take an interest in the arts, because it is really food for the soul. And we will continue to do that. I think we've made progress. I think we need more progress. And I think the progress should come from quantity, because we need more. I mean, quality, I think we're achieving, you know, slowly but surely. I think you see the work out there that's very exciting, very, really powerful performances, young actors coming up, they're so impressive. But now we need more representation in terms of different voices, because we cannot speak for all. So, I mean, you know, Asian America is a multicultural, multi-ethnic society. So we really need those voices out there on a continuous basis, because that's the bridge. And that's the oneness that everybody's talking about. Because the more you know about me, the more opportunity to understand me, and the more opportunity for us to be united as one.
That's beautifully said, Ty. Thank you. And a perfect segue, actually, to our final panelist, Kelly Yang. Kelly, you were raised in America, but then moved to Hong Kong as an adult. And it was while you were there that you wrote a YA novel based on your personal experiences as the daughter in an immigrant family. Front Desk quickly shot up to the bestseller list, and you're now a household name for the next generation. What message do you want to impart to them? And what do you see changing in the consciousness of our children who are coming of age at this historic inflection point as compared with us?
Thank you so much. Thanks, Janet, for that amazing introduction and all the panelists. I've been just blown away, and just listening to Ty and Joan and Leehom talk about, their experiences as a creator. As a creator, I think we have such an opportunity to change the landscape of what it means to grow up Asian American. When I grew up Asian American, I didn't see myself on the covers of books. I didn't see myself in the movies. I didn't see our stories out there the way it is now. And so as a writer, I feel like that's such an amazing opportunity and responsibility to portray our people and to get it right and not shy away from depicting all the things that we're going through. And that's one of the things that I try to do in my work. I have a book coming out, Parachutes, it's coming out in a couple of weeks, about Chinese students coming over to the US and facing a lot of discrimination and facing sexual misconduct in their schools. That's very much based on my own experience growing up as an immigrant. And a lot of that stuff is very, very raw. And I'm putting that on the page because I want to inspire the next generation to speak up. Your voice is your armor. It's the only thing that we have to protect ourselves. It's the one thing that, America can give us, in a way that is so empowering, and we have to use it. We have to use it so that the next generation can see more of themselves depicted in these stories that are going to collectively change the landscape. So that would be sort of my message to kids is, don't be afraid. Don't hold back, write what you're feeling right now. There's a lot of frustration. There's also a lot of love. There's a lot of fear, but there's also a lot of hope. And we want to put all of that onto the page, onto the screen, so that we go down in history and we can control our own narrative in history.
Very, very well said as well. I am inspired by all of you, and I feel confident that despite some of the challenges we're facing now, we are here to stay. We have a voice, a stronger voice than ever. We have platforms to share that voice. In fact, we've built a lot of those platforms. So good luck to those who say go back to China. Yes, we may want to go back and visit relatives or even to live, but our indelible mark on this country will be felt for many decades to come, hopefully forever. I believe we've run out of time. We've gone over, but I want to thank all of you so much, truly, for your contributions to culture, society, and humanity. Wang Leehom, Joan Chen.
Thanks for having us. Thank you, Asia Society.
And I'm going to hand this now back to Charlie Coker, who is the Executive Director of Asia Society Southern California.
Janet, thanks so much for a wonderful panel, and thanks to Wang Leehom and Kelly Wang and Tzi Ma and Joan Chen for their amazing discussion about the creative process and about the role of Asian Americans in the creative industry and milieu here in the US. I wanted to thank everybody for an amazing discussion and panels today. Also to Lisa Ling and her amazing panel, and to Tom Nagorski and the very inspiring young folks, as well as the other people we've listened to on our PSAs. We're very proud to have worked hard to not only put on this program, to put on other programs, as Dick mentioned, Dick Drobnick, our chairman, mentioned earlier about the epidemiology of the disease with Dr. Jiang Wenhong from Shanghai, and also Dr. Fielding from our own UCLA Fielding School of Public Health. And also to have put on an economic seminar a week or so ago with Howard Marks from Oak Tree Capital, and John Emerson from Capital Group, and Wei Jin Shan from PAG Group in Hong Kong. So it's really been our goal here to produce the best content we possibly can and to bring information to you from the people who are really in the know. And I hope that that if this kind of programming is important to you and valued by you, that the audience would help us and support us and to work with us and to donate. And just to read out the URL again, if you are interested in donate, it's asiasociety.org/donate LA. That's a site that's up on an ongoing basis. And we would welcome any financial support or any other support from the public. I would also like to thank our many community collaborative partners We've had an amazing response from our community here, not only Asia Society Global, but also the American Chamber of Commerce in Shanghai, the Asian Business League of Southern California, the Chinese Chamber of Commerce of Los Angeles, the East Coast Coalition for Tolerance and Non-Discrimination, the Japan American Society, the Los Angeles Urban League, the UCLA Luskin School of Public Affairs, the USC Marshall School of Business IBR MBA program, and the USC US China Institute. We thank you for all of your help and for working together, because we really believe this is a collaborative process and we need all voices to be in this very, very important discussion. So as a final moment here, I'd like to invite you to stay and listen to a final presentation and by Katherine Ho, a very yet talented Asian American singer who was featured on the movie Crazy Rich Asians, performing Coldplay's song, actually, Yellow. And so here to reprise her performance on Crazy Rich Asians is Katherine Ho performing Yellow by Coldplay. Thank you very much and have a good evening.
Hi, everyone. It's truly such an honor to be a part of Asia Society's discussion of COVID-19 and its social implications. I know that these issues are complex and there's not necessarily an easy fix to them, but I hope that I can bring a little bit of hope into the conversation through music. So today I'm going to be singing a Mandarin cover of Coldplay's Yellow that I had the honor of recording for the film Crazy Rich Asians. And I love this song because it's a Mandarin twist on an iconic American love song. And I think that the cultural hybridity of the song is a strong reminder to us that even though we all have different skin colors and we speak different languages, we're all part of the human race and we're all fighting this awful global pandemic together. So I hope you guys enjoy this song and thank you again for having me. 我想知道流星能飞多久，它的美丽是否只去寻求夜空的花散落在你身后，幸福了我很久。 手中，雨花，正黑夜的彩虹。 you guys so much for having me.